Hey TNA fans, we're starting something new this week that we think you might be interested in. If you're a listener to our main podcast and you've heard FTW Fallout, it's the conversation that happens after the show, after the mics are turned off. Sometimes it's more wrestling-related content, other times it might not be. And overall, we've heard great feedback on it. Starting this week, we're going to be debuting the Fans Talk TNA edition. It's not for everybody, but it's a little bit of bonus content for those who support us by joining the FTW community on fanstalktna.com. This week, we're releasing it to everyone just to give you a little taste, a little idea of what we have in mind. But starting next week, we're going to be releasing it exclusively to supporters. On this week's edition, Nick and I stuck around for about another 15 minutes or so, talk about this week's Unlocked rankings, why we don't like it, why we find problems with it, and then we give our own rankings, our own Fans Talk TNA rankings. Definitely a fun conversation in which you finally hear me emote with rage, which is a side of me you guys rarely hear. So again, Fans Talk TNA Fallout is a bonus piece of content we're going to be releasing every week to members of the FTW community. To join, you can head on over to fanstalktna.com, click the Join the FTW Community button, and pledge. Every little bit will keep this conversation going each and every week. But now, on to this week's TNA conversation. From the Fans Talk Wrestling family at fanstalkwrestling.com and in collaboration with TNAMecca.com, this is Fans Talk TNA. It's a weekly conversation about what's going on in the world of TNA and Impact Wrestling. After the episode is over, head on over to TNAMecca.com for TNA conversations with fans just like you. This is episode 17. My name is Garvin. I'm once again joined by Nick. Say hello, Nick.
It's yourself.
All right, we are going to talk about the week that was in TNA, basically the fallout of Lockdown. So last week, Lockdown, we had a lot of mixed emotions as far as whether or not we liked Lockdown as a special event, as a episode of Impact or whatever. And it seemed like some of that middle-of-the-road type feelings carried on. If you read any of the comments on TNAMecca.com, if you read any of the comments anywhere else. So it seems like people are still kind of unsure what TNA is doing, but we're going to go a little bit in depth in a few seconds. But before we do that, let's start off with some corrections. The first correction we want to make, there's something that was said on the show last week, and that was basically me saying how enthused I was that the cage, like the hole for the camera, was finally used in a Lockdown spot. And Chris Regal, amongst many others, let us know that Christy Hemme went through the cage hole last year during the Samuel Shaw and Mr. Anderson match. And there was also references to other spots just like that. So I was wrong. It's been used before. I have a bad memory.
And you should feel bad.
I feel terrible. Thanks, guys. Also, before we really get into the conversation, I think it's needed for us to kind of clarify a few things. We've been throwing out some cryptic tweets as of late. Some of the Fans Talk TNA guys have seen it, as far as the listeners go, as far as the people over at TNAMecca.com as well. Chris Regal, the big boss over there at TNAMecca.com, reached out to us to make sure everything was okay. And we just want to say, while we are considering other options for the main FTW podcast show, like if we want to continue it, if there's changes we want to make, as of right now, Fans Talk TNA is in great shape. Fans Talk TNA, we get 20 to 30 comments on TNAMecca.com. We also see some reactions over on YouTube and Facebook, and so we feel like there's something really cool going on with this show and with this conversation, between Nick and I and with you. And we want to continue that. So have no fear. Fans Talk TNA is not going anywhere. We're very happy with how things are going. Some shout outs. Bogger3K, Chris Regal, Vincent K. Valentine, Antonio Wyatt, Cobrad, and I apologize if that's not how you pronounce that. Stephen Wells, Jav of Steel, Blood Rain, Derek, IP375, and Big Dog 801. Thank you so much, guys, for continuing the conversation both on YouTube and TNAMecca.com. It was great to see you guys react to things that we had said, agreed, disagreed, as well as point out when we messed up. So, in the Ask FTW side of things, Bogger3K reached out on YouTube and he said, basically that twice he found instances when Taz would give us the wrong information as far as the rules of a cage match. So, every single time that Taz would talk about how to win a cage match, he always referenced exiting the cage. However, that's not the case in TNA. It's always a pin and submission. So yeah, I guess for Bogger, he blamed Taz for making this mistake. But I think, to me, I don't know about you, Nick. I caught this as well. Primarily there was the point in the tag team match when Matt Hardy was pulled through the cage. That didn't count. When Mandrews exited the cage, that didn't count. So, but for me, it doesn't seem like it's an issue with Taz. Maybe it's just an issue with the production team. Whoever is telling Taz the rules of this match that they're about to, watch. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, not just with Taz and not just with, just with fans in general. We all think that cage matches are exit the cage, but for whatever reason, that's not the case. It doesn't seem.
Yeah, I blame the industry as a whole for this sort of confusion because everybody does cage matches of some form or another, and it's not every promotion has a different set of rules, but there are tons of different rule sets for tons of different matches involving various sorts of cages, whether the cage has a top or whether it doesn't, whether it has a door going outside or whether it doesn't. Could be a Punjabi prison for all we know.
Yeah.
So Taz has been in several different promotions with those sorts of different rules. I don't blame him for mixing it up if it was indeed his fault. Personally, I didn't notice him saying that there was an escape from the cage. I remember, if not Taz, and at least Josh Matthews saying that the way you win is by pin or submission. I may just be remembering Lethal Lockdown match, but yeah, it's just really confusing to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a set amount of expectations that we all have. And, Taz is a fan of wrestling. So I think it's fine for him to, have that same expectation of what a cage match is. And, most likely he just wasn't told differently. That's just how it is. And I don't blame Taz for that. Yeah, Taz should know, but it should be on the producers to tell him. So I'm not necessarily defending Taz. I just think, yeah, like what you said, there's an issue with the industry right now where the industry doesn't seem to know what a cage match is. They just promote it, and then no one seems to really have an idea of, what that means. So we do need like a firm set of rules and regulations when it comes to these types of matches. Okay, so going back to our conversation last week about who deserves more TV time, Antonio Wyatt posted on TNAMecca.com. He said Gunner. Gunner is the one that needs more TV time. What do you think about that name?
I agree that he definitely needs a lot of time to improve. Personally, I'm kind of done with Gunner, so whether he improves or not is besides the point for me. But yeah, it's definitely a valid answer.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm done with Gunner as well. You can give him as much mic time as you want. You can give him as much story time as you want, but I think we'll have the same end result, which is me not really caring about Gunner. So I don't know. I don't know. Could he develop into a bigger character if given more time? Sure. But you could say that for anyone, and I don't know why you would put someone over Gunner. I'm sorry. I don't know why you would put Gunner over someone else. That's what I meant. So,
yeah.
Antonio White also said that he wishes Mandrews was brought up as a legitimate guy rather than a prop in the Spud versus EC3 feud. And I agree with this. I felt the same way. When they're bringing this guy up, I suppose it's easy to team him up with JB and Spud just because they all are a part of the same, that same thing, that same British boot camp, event. So, I mean, that's how Rockstar Spud came up. JB is a major force in that. So it makes sense that they partnered up. It's just a shame that this is how they're bringing up Mandrews if they're going to make him out to be a serious guy. And it really has me fearful of Mandrews' future. Is he going to be another Rockstar Spud where he's just used as a comedic guy? Or, are we really going to see him wrestle? And, we are seeing little shades of him wrestling, but I'm still fearful that that's not how it's going to continue.
Yeah, I blame that less on how he was brought in than who he's facing right now. And that's Tyrus. It's typically when you got small guys like that facing off big guys like that,
right,
it takes a while to wear them down. Whatever they're throwing at the big guy usually doesn't have much effect. And yeah, that doesn't really do anything for a guy like Mandrews. I don't necessarily know how you could have brought him in other than using the boot camp connection. But yeah, I do wish that he had a way to establish himself legitimately. I don't necessarily see him in the comedic role. If anything, he's the fall guy for Spud's jokes. Or not the fall guy, the straight man.
Right.
But yeah, hopefully this goes somewhere so that we can consider them both to be legitimate wrestlers in their own right. And this redemption story actually concludes with that result.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, I like you, I'm totally fine with him being partnered with Spud. It makes sense. But just right now, to me, it just seems like they're pigeonholing him into this one role, which we've already seen Spud go through. So I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. Chris Regal commented, I think Lockdown is better suited for a pay-per-view due to the theme. Cage matches historically are meant to be a grand in scale, and they need time to develop. So a 2-hour show with commercials is simply not ideal. Do you think, do you agree with that? Do you think that they shouldn't have an event called Lockdown, or with all of these cage matches, if they're going to continue putting it on, free TV?
I don't necessarily agree with that. I brought up last time around the NXT specials, and those do incredibly well. TNA has all the potential in the world to build this up as a special event rather than a pay-per-view. It's just they need to devote time to it. They need to devote a proper build to it. 1 month for a 2-hour special is plenty of time if you use it properly.
Yeah, I don't disagree that you can make an event like this feel special. NXT is doing it, and they're doing it very well. I guess what it comes down to for me is, with all these matches in cages, you expect there to be, you are expecting something grander in scale. And, a lot of matches didn't get necessarily the time that you would think that a cage match would get, like a Havoc versus Kong match. I think that's a perfect example of how, a great match just didn't come off as well because they just weren't given enough time to do it. So for me, I'm okay with Lockdown. I'm okay with the event in general, but if they're going to continue doing this on a 2-hour time period, don't put every match in a cage. I don't think it's as necessary. I think you could tell the same stories, with say for instance, Tyrus versus Spud and Mandrews. That didn't necessarily need to be in the cage until tell the same story.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I think the day when you could have gimmick pay-per-views like that, or gimmick events where every match is in a cage or whatever other sort of stipulation you want, every match is a hardcore match of some kind, I think that's over and done with. Cage matches, yeah, like Chris said, they're supposed to be feud enders. They're supposed to be big deals.
Right.
And I appreciate Tyrus versus Spud Mandrews being put in a cage because it gave Spud the chance to take that big dive off the top. But unless it's something along the lines of Jeff Hardy taking a header off the cage into the steel steps, it's something you can duplicate by just having Tyrus move to the outside of the ring and Spud jump off the turnbuckle. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Only have the major feuds, the feud-ending matches inside that cage. Havoc and Kong's first encounter should not have been inside a cage.
Right. Yeah, that's where you go third match. Yeah, I'm with you. So we've got one more comment that I want to read from the Ask FTW, but it's going to be us asking you guys. We want to hear what you have to say about this. And hopefully we'll have a little bit more time next week because we just went super long on Ask FTW this week. But Stephen Wells commented, Jeff Hardy just isn't human. What he does to himself purely for the entertainment, purely for entertainment's sake is unreal. I think he's a very real candidate for TNA's Hall of Fame this time around. So, that specific piece, is Jeff Hardy Hall of Fame quality? Should Jeff Hardy be inducted in this year's Hall of Fame? So, that's something we're going to ask you, and leave your thoughts in the comments on TNAMecca.com or on YouTube or wherever you're listening. Let us know what you think, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about it next week. All right, so this week on TNA, on Impact Wrestling, on Destination America, it was the fallout of Lockdown. So pretty much starts the start of some new stories, the continuation of some feuds. Overall, what was your favorite moment from this week?
I particularly enjoyed Al Snow calling out Grado and just seeing the level of support Grado had from the hometown crowd. I think there was a phrase Josh Matthews used, a cult following. And that's incredibly accurate insofar as Grado's rise in UK wrestling.
Right.
His main home promotion, ICW. They're compared a lot to ECW insofar as the reaction their talent gets, just how crazy those fans get for the wrestlers. And Grado's one of the top guys. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes, how Grado wrestles in front of a huge crowd like this on national or international, in this case, TV.
Yeah, it should be interesting. That's probably something else we're going to talk about next week as far as, Grado's place in TNA. Did TNA make a mistake? That seems to be what a lot of people were saying when Mandrews was picked, that they should have gone with Grado. So now that we have Grado in a ring with Al Snow, it's going to be nice to see how he interacts with the crowd, how he wrestles, and if, I don't know. I think it's worth a debate for next week. So let's remember to do that. But I'm with you. I like that whole segment. To me, it was all new stuff, so I didn't really understand. I mean, I'm aware that there was like this feud. They have sort of built that up, over social media and whatnot. So, I am aware that there is an issue between Al Snow and Grado, but this, as the introduction to the TV side of it, was kind of odd. But Al Snow killed it. I thought he was fantastic on the mic. So,
yeah, just that growling voice. I've forgotten how he sounds. So
yeah, it was really cool. There was actually a lot of cool stuff this week. Bram beating down Crazy Steve and calling out Magnus the entire time. The main event was a very good match with a very good ending. So, but for me, my favorite moment, this week was Rude versus Aries. Just the match itself, I thought was fantastic. The post match, back and forth dialogue between Aries and Rude, I thought was pretty cool as well. And, should also note, Mr. TNA's ringside review on TNAMecca.com. That's what he said as well, that it was the Rude versus Aries match because it was such a good representation of what the current TNA product can bring. Great wrestling with some of the best in the business. So yeah, totally agree with that. What about least favorite moment? What didn't you like about Impact this week?
I wasn't a huge fan of Spud's backup being Mr. Anderson. I'm not necessarily anti-Anderson all the time.
All the time. That was a good injection there. Go ahead.
A lot of alliteration. But I don't necessarily see how he fits into this. I don't know why Spud feels like he can count on Anderson. And I'll admit there's a little disappointment on my part because I was really hoping for somebody else. And personally, I'm not really sure if I want to mention who that is because technically it's not a spoiler since TNA revealed it.
Yeah. No, I think I know who you're talking about, but yeah. I agree. Anderson, he's better than Chris Melendez.
Yeah, I mean, Anderson versus EC3, especially on the mic, should be pretty good.
Yeah.
But I just don't see the connection there.
Well, to me, it's the next step. I mean, to me, it's once EC3 is done with Spud, which hopefully is very soon, Anderson fits right into that mold as far as, or into that role as the veteran that EC3 can conquer.
Okay, I could see that transition.
So, I mean, from a storyline perspective, if that's the direction they're going to go, I'm all for it. Just for the fact that we would get EC3 coming down to the ring and doing his own introductions with a mic.
I do find it a little interesting that Anderson's taken this complete 180 shift from the asshole gimmick he had to where he's standing up for those getting bullied.
Yeah.
Like first Melendez, now Spud.
Yeah. That is odd. Lots of space in between though.
Yeah.
So, least favorite moment for Mr. TNA's ringside review was the Madison Rayne Awesome Kong segment, specifically the fact that Madison Rayne couldn't tell that was Awesome Kong's music interrupting her. I think that's pretty obvious to everyone, but her for some reason. Yeah,
that was weird.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Madison Rayne as well. I didn't really like what she brought to it. I didn't like that. That's just, I don't know, like, make the match, make Kong look strong. I don't think it needed that extra bit that she added. My other least favorite moment really wasn't from this week's Impact, but this week's Impact Unlocked, which was Mike Tenay, but we'll get into that when we go over the rankings.
Oh yeah.
MVP of the night. Who you got?
I'm going to go with Kurt Angle. It's not necessarily anything he did so much as how he made me feel. And it really surprised me because I'm legitimately excited about an Angle Lashley program for the title. And I don't think I would have said that a month ago. I don't think I would have wanted Angle anywhere near the title picture.
Right.
Because he's been there so long throughout his tenure in TNA. And it feels like if he retired tomorrow, I think he would be in a pretty good spot. But now, after that promo and after everything he said throughout the show, I'm legitimately interested.
Yeah, it's odd. Like, Angle has definitely slowed down, because of the injuries or, whatever you want to say. But yeah, overall, I'm not necessarily looking forward to Angle being involved in the top title race, but I think it does add a nice dynamic. It is like an outside veteran stepping in to get a title shot. I think it's nice, because we don't want just MVP and Rude and EY and Lashley every week. It is nice to have some other guys step up in there. So yeah, so I'm okay with Angle. I thought what he did this week was really cool. My MVP of the night is going to go to MVP. His opening segment, outside, just the way he can, he spoke to everyone. Also, that opening segment when they're in the ring, and then the fact that he pinned Lashley, I thought that was great. That was fantastic. It really put MVP on, credible ground as far as, they could have totally like fell off the map because of, the losses at Lockdown, but, and this is something Mr. TNA pointed out, just BDC in general, they got his MVP because, even though they lost at Lockdown, it didn't matter because this week they secured 17 through 19 for this upcoming Battle Royal for next week. So or this week rather. So yeah, I mean overall, like, BDC really did a nice job this week, but MVP by far was the star. Your grade?
Last week I gave it an A-. I gave Lockdown an A-. This week I'm going to drop a little bit and go with B+. Overall, I enjoyed the show, but there were a few key points that just did not click with me. The Anderson being involved with Spud.
Right.
EY coming back to take Rude out. I don't get why this feud's still going on after Rude beat him at Lockdown so definitively. I don't see where it's going. And there were a couple other minor things like Madison Rayne not getting Kong's entrance theme and a couple other things like that. But overall, I think there was still a lot to be enjoyed here. The main event, Rude versus Aries, even the handicap match, that was fairly entertaining.
Right.
JB took a splash down to the outside.
The suicide splash, yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of good moments. You aren't the only one who looked at Lockdown as being the better show. Mr. TNA also went from a B+, which was the first B of the year, to now a C+. Just, overall expectations were that, the show after Lockdown was going to be like a cool-off episode type thing. I didn't really get that. I don't know why Mr. TNA felt that way, but for me, I thought this was a much better show than Lockdown. Just seemed everything kind of fit well together. Maybe it's because not everything was forced into a cell. I don't know. But like this episode worked a lot better for me. So I went from a C+ last week back to a B. But B solid. All right, and that's the show. We'll be reading and responding to your comments all day on TNAMecca.com. So let's continue the conversation over there. If you enjoyed this conversation, stick around. After the break, Nick and I are going to continue the conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about the this week's TNA Unlocked rankings. What a mess. But we're gonna go over it and go what we like about it, what we don't like about it, and ways that we can improve it. So definitely stick around with that. It's going to be called Fans Talk TNA Fallout. It's going to be something we're going to be releasing pretty much every week moving forward. If you want to keep in on that conversation, head on over to fanstalktna.com and join the FTW community. For Nick, this is Garvin saying goodbye. We'll see you next Thursday. Have a good week and enjoy this week on Impact, everybody. See you later.
Let's make a try!
If you heard that tone, that means we are now on Fans Talk TNA Fallout. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, hopefully it's a lot of fun. But let's get right into it. All right. Unlocked rankings. We got to talk about this. I'm fired up. Well, I was fired up. I'm much more relaxed now, but, I was fired up earlier today because of how absurd the reasoning is. I don't mind the list, but it's just this reasoning that I don't get. So let's start from the bottom. First of all, Bobby Roode was number 1 last week. Pretty much number 1 the entire time we've had these unlocked rankings. This week, he's not even in the top 5, and the reason is because he was injured by EY. Do we even know that he's injured?
I didn't until I read up on the rankings and the reasons why.
Yeah. This was news to me. I didn't know. To me, it's like, I think EY was put on the list originally because he attacked Rude or something like that, and then now EY attacks Rude again, and Rude's taken off. Like that's absurd. Take him like down a couple spots, but to lose 5 spots just because he was attacked by EY, he beat Austin Aries, who has an automatic number 1 contendership spot.
I do understand if he is injured, if he's being sidelined, I do understand him being dropped off the list because then he can't contend for the title. But, I mean, like you said, we don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, go slowly with it. Like, drop him down a spot or 2. Don't drop, like, maybe in 2-3 weeks he's out of the top 5 because everyone else has gone up. But just to take him out like this makes no sense. Aries was dropped. He was in spot number 3. He dropped out of the top 5 for absolutely no reason. I mean, you could say it's because he lost to Bobby Roode, but that's not what Tenay said. Tenay said nothing.
Yeah, I mean, Taz and Matthews explained exactly why that loss means nothing because he tapped out to fight another day because ultimately that match didn't matter. He's got the shot. Which, why he's not automatic number 1 contender because he has a guaranteed title shot, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. I don't know. So, okay, here's your top 5. You might remember a few weeks ago, maybe it was last week, I can't recall. EC3 was dropped from like 3 to 5 because he was focusing on JB and Spud. Then he was dropped out of the list because he was focusing on on JB and Spud. This week, still focusing on JB and Spud, but he's still undefeated, so he's in your number 5 spot.
It could be argued he's focusing on Anderson now, who couldn't be further away from the title picture than you could possibly imagine.
Samoa Joe is in your number 4 spot. He raised 2 spots. This is the first time Samoa Joe has been on the list since week 1. And yeah, because of his win over Lashley and Angle, totally get that. I'm totally fine with Samoa Joe being considered for this list. Low Key is your number 3. He went up 2 spots because he's undefeated in the X Division.
He hasn't had an X Division title match.
Okay, I'm getting fired up again because this is so, like, reading this out loud. This is I hate this. Okay. MVP is your number 2. Totally cool. He pinned Lashley, so he went from number 4 to number 2. Totally fitting. Do not disagree with that. Kurt Angle, though, is your number 1 from number 2. And it's because he said he's coming for the title.
That's an incredibly stupid reason. I don't dispute his placement up there because he won Lockdown. He captained the team that won Lockdown.
For sure.
And he was on top of the world to kick the show off. And he didn't take the pin either.
But he went up 1 spot because he told Lashley, "Hey, I'm gonna come for your title soon."
Yeah.
Oh dear. So let's do this because this is I feel like we need to do this. I know we're not the only ones that disagree with at least the reasonings of these rankings. So let's go over who we would have in our top 5. So I put a list together. Nick, I know you had a chance to look at it, but let's talk about who's not in the list, and then we'll just start going up. And I don't know. I guess we can argue if there's someone to argue about, or we can whatever decide. But not in the running EC3 because he's not going after the title. Low Key because he's your X Division champion and has nothing to do with the world title. I also have Eric Young as a runner-up. I have him like at the number 6 spot because he's kind of like there. He wants the title. He's made it clear he wants the title, but he just doesn't have the wins to be up there. Do you agree with EY not being in?
I would place him at number 5 simply because of the fact that he potentially has sidelined Rude.
Okay, that's actually good. That's a good thing. That's a good note. To me, I had Samoa Joe up there because he had a win over Angle and Lashley, this week with the tag match. But maybe there's a better place for that. Gunner, I'm gonna have at your runner-up list, and the only reason why Gunner is in this list is because he said out loud, I didn't take advantage of the last opportunity I had at the title, and this time I am going to. So, I mean, he made it clear he's coming for the title. That's the only reason why he's in this list.
Yeah, and at least in kayfabe, he does have a strong case to make.
Yeah, if you verbally state you're coming for the title, you should be considered. Okay. So Samoa Joe, let's do this. Let's do a tie for number 5. Well, no. Yeah, a tie for number 5 between Eric Young and Samoa Joe. You good with that?
Okay. And
your number 6 or number 7, however you're looking at this, is Gunner. Number 4, Austin Aries, because he's got the automatic title shot. But so he deserves to be in this list. But since he lost to Rude this week, I wanted him up in the list, but not in the top 3, just because of that loss.
I see the reasoning there.
Yeah.
But like I said before, he's got an automatic title shot.
Well, sure.
So the way I see it, he has the strongest case to be made
for
being next in line. Oh. As far as the most likely guy to take the title away from Lashley, nobody else has a clear shot yet. But Aries can cash in that opportunity at any time.
So you want to put Austin Aries as number 1?
I do.
Okay. I don't disagree with that. The only reason why I would say no for number 1, I mean, yes, you're right. He has the automatic shot. But in the grand scheme of things, we're doing rankings, and you have to win matches to be ranked.
I think the distinction that was made by commentary, I think that overrides the automatic drop that a loss would normally give. Like if Aries was just out, down for the count, 1, 2, 3, clean win, that's it, then yeah, I definitely agree with you. But TNA is painting this picture of Aries being a smart competitor and taking the loss when ultimately that loss doesn't matter.
So should he even be in this list? Because it doesn't matter where he places here. He's going to have that title shot. So he probably doesn't even need to be in consideration here. Or if anything, an asterisk.
That's a good point. If we're doing ties, I'd say tied for first.
Okay, tied for first. All right, we'll go with that. Kurt Angle was my number 3. Not because he said he's coming for the title, because we already knew that. We've known that for 2 weeks now. But because he had the big win at Lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely at least number 3.
MVP is your number 2.
Yeah, given how strong he came out this past week. Yeah.
Bobby Roode, your number 1.
I almost want to put him behind MVP and Angle. And again, it's just how unclear his situation is.
He beat EY at Lockdown. He beat Aries this week. He's on a winning streak.
Yeah, but then he got clobbered.
Well, okay, Tanae.
I mean, if we're talking about the most recent things taking precedence.
Yeah.
And you were talking about racking up wins. Well, getting sidelined.
If he's sidelined.
Matches.
If he's sidelined, yes.
Yeah, if.
So next week, if he doesn't wrestle because he's hurt, then he goes down the list.
All right. Yeah, that sounds fair. I just wish they would have explained that so much better.
Me too. All right. So that's your list. That's your top 5 from us. We've got Eric Young at Samoa Joe tied for number 4. Kurt Angle at number 3, MVP at number 2, and Bobby Roode tied with Austin Aries with an asterisk next to Austin Aries' name at your number 1.
Dirty Heels sitting at the top.
We were also thinking about doing top 5s originally for Knockouts X Division Tag Team, but we just don't have that many, so we were going to do top 3, but we are like totally out of time, so I think we'll connect with those next week. If you have an idea or a list in your head of what you want to see or what you think for the X Division or Tag Team Division or Knockouts, as far as like a top 3 ranking system, definitely let us know in the comments. This week in TNA, pretty much the big story is the 20-man, I think, 20-man battle royal. It's like a gauntlet battle royal match where the winner will go on to face Lashley next week. Any quick predictions, Nick? Who do you think's going to win that? And keep in mind that MVP, I forget who else. Was it is MVP Samoa Joe?
Joe and Loki?
And Loki?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, they're in the top 5 or the final 5. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't know if I call this a safe pick, but Angle makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay. I don't have a pick here, but I would be totally fine if EC3 won.
Because it would finally legitimize his spot in the rankings.
Yes, and I do think he belongs there if that's where they're going to go, but as of right now, he has no interest in that title. Final thoughts before we head out.
Come on, tonight, get your shit together.
For real. That's my final thought too. I really was hoping they were going to do something cool with this, with just how they were using it to build up this gauntlet match, but man, they ruin it fast.
Yeah, take a second away from drafting your top 10 fantasy teams on Taz's podcast and focus on your actual job.
Yeah.